kudos to you all for starting the year off right. I'll welcome Reva. You want to come on up? Co-host for this morning. Welcome, welcome, buddy. The MC, he's going to be driving the conversation. I kick it off and then I hand it to him and he takes it wherever he wants. And then we open it up for open Q&A with you all as well. But I was thinking, before we get going, if you want to take 60 seconds just to say hi to the person to your left or right, because one of the coolest things, and this is something we have not done enough of, one of the coolest things about this, maybe the coolest thing about something like this is not like going to a movie and it's for mass consumption and you have no idea who the person to the left or right might be. This is a very, they actually say this in this philosophy that 1 in 10,000 are interested in the deep topics within philosophy. But for those that are interested in it, nearly nothing is as interesting. So the people that come to something like this on a Friday morning, especially during the holidays when you could do anything, end up being pretty unique. And we know this because we've been doing this for 3 years and we just know the quality of the people here and how amazing the people to the left and right tend to be for something like this. Even the Lighthouse staff has commented on it before. That I would love to take 60 seconds for you to chat with the person, maybe in 2 minutes for you to chat with the person to your left or right. Don't worry, I won't make it too long. But someone that you haven't met before, and just ask them what made you want to come to something like this this morning. Because I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty interesting answer. And the thing that you'll take from this, more than any points that might be discussed, will be the relationships of the community and the types of people that come to something like this. So find someone you've never met before and just ask them what made you come to something like this on a Friday morning to kick off the new year. All right, everybody. Okay, that was great. I could tell, I could actually scan the room and realize people did not want that to stop, which is so great. My wife and I would go to a church in Malibu, and we lived in Venice for years, and we just moved to Malibu a few months ago, and we go to a church out there, and they do something similar, and you can tell people do want it to stop. After a little while, it's like, all right, can we get going? But that was actually beautiful to see. I could tell many people did not want it to stop. And what's so great about this venue in the Lighthouse is right after this, feel free. Everybody can chat and people usually do. People have gone until like 11:30, noon. But you can grab a coffee. You can chat literally 4 feet outside the door, or there's really cool tables right outside where you could work. You could chat with a friend. Grab a coffee with a new friend and do all of that. Well, with that, kick it off, and I'll hand it over to you, Reva, and you can, kick it off however you'd like.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Woo! 2026.
I usually come to these with a very prescriptive list of questions. I was just in the car with my wife rehearsing these questions before and seeing what was good, what didn't land as much, but just in our initial dialogue right now, before we started, James and I were talking about New Year's, and it is a special day, and it's also not in a sense. It's a special day in that it's a natural time for us to think about what our priorities are. We set goals, the famous framework of New Year's resolutions, whether it's going to the gym. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think about this idea of New Year's as this natural time to reevaluate our ideals in the context of Vedanta? Is it a special time, or do you see it as just another week or another day where you do your morning reflection?
It's a great question, and I'll tell you, and we were talking a little bit about this a few seconds ago, at the ashram in India. So today we'll talk about this philosophy, this ancient Indian philosophy called Advaita Vedanta. It's the oldest philosophy in terms of continuous study, living philosophies. It's the oldest philosophy on the planet, and goes back to these 4 textbooks called the Vedas. And like I said, we're going to have public Q&A, so you can ask any question if there are some gaps where you'd like to learn more specifically around Vedanta. I'd say this space, this container, also makes room for any and every philosophical topic, because the oldest of the Vedas, the Rig Veda, the oldest philosophical text in the world, quite literally says, truth is one, sage is called by many names. And that might be different than many traditions that might propose that they have the truth and other traditions don't. This philosophy is like, no, there's one truth, and sages called by many names. And not only sages called by many names, this truth is the same truth. The word dharma in Sanskrit means truth, means nature, means law. It means, in some contexts, it means God. It's all of these things: truth, nature, law. So the truth in a flower blooming is the same, maybe even more truth than anything that could be uttered in language. So truth is one, sages called by many names, and you all we can bring up any philosophical topic during these philosophy hangs each Friday. We've been doing things for 3 years, and Reva's been to the ashram that I study with, that we all sit, many of us, for the Venice Vedanta Club, study with each morning. You can watch the lectures in the most 2026 way, where it's just from the comfort of your couch or your desk. It's crazy that you can watch lectures from halfway around the world, and so you no longer need to go to an ashram. You no longer need to even go to 60, 70 years ago. You need to find a teacher of this philosophy in the Himalayas, and it was incredibly hard to find them. And even when you found them, they would say, "Bring me firewood and qualify. Like, let me see if you're a real student." And you bring them firewood for a year, and then they'd be like, "Okay, this is a real student and not a tourist." So we have it easy, very easy, from the comfort of our couches in the morning. And the ashram that we study with, there is no distinction in the days. There is no not through the week where it's like, all right, the weekends are different. It's the same programming every day. There's about 3 times a year, there's retreats where there's special programming for people coming, but even that is built around the daily structure of the ashram, where you wake up at 4, then you go and you walk outside, you ring a bell, and then you go back into your room and you just do quiet study on your own. You could watch episodes of The Simpsons if you want. No one's monitoring anybody. Or you could, if you're taking the time to go to an ashram, probably dive into these eternal truths, these eternal principles. And then you've got yoga, you've got outdoor time, then you got breakfast, and then you've got karma time, where you just walk around and everybody has a task of something to take care of, communally take care of the grounds and the facilities. And then you've got lunch, and then you have it's free time to do whatever you want. Go to the gym, go take a nap. A lot of people do take a nap because you wake up so early. And then you have a lecture in the evening, and I missed a lecture in the morning as well. Morning lecture and evening lecture. Then you have dinner. That's it. Nothing changes, even for retreats, for New Year's, for Christmas, for any kind of world traditional holiday. Nothing really changes, and I think the mistake would be to say there's a reduced significance of a holiday, or a reduced significance of New Year's Day for austerity. It's like, no, every day is the same, and it's the opposite. There is such a promotion, such an elevated significance of every single day that, oh, New Year's is happening. Well, I've already been elevating the importance and the value of every day before that. And people say Happy New Year, and it's totally there's no rules of austerity. It's like I said, it's just every day is so elevated that it carries over when you're listening to lectures or starting your day with St. Augustine. If you build your day around how valuable and how easy it is to take for granted a Monday is, if you build your day on the opposite side of the spectrum of how valuable every day is, every day above ground is a great day. New Year's comes and kind of goes without too much fanfare. So I've said Happy New Year's to 100 people, but we went to bed, what, 9? My wife's right over there. Went to bed at 9, same time every night. Woke up, same time every morning. And it's not because it's a depreciation of New Year's. It's just an appreciation of every single day. That was so long-winded. Apologies.
That was great.
Wanted to build in the right context for that answer.
Do you personally set resolutions during this time?
Daily resolutions.
Yeah.
Why wait once a year for a very arbitrary day in the calendar? Like quite literally arbitrary. How we just said this is going to be the start of the year. It's arbitrary how we set 7 days into a week. Like the Mayan calendar, for example, is like built around rhythms that tie very closely to nature. You have I don't pay too much attention to astrology, but there are very clear rhythms in nature that don't follow the Roman calendar that we all follow. Daily resolutions. And that's the value of a kind of a grounding wire to start the day with spiritual study, philosophical study, even just journaling on your own. Before the sun comes up, you could set a resolution for that time, for that morning time, or for that day. And when you set it, it's powerful. But why wait to do it only once a year?
I have a couple of colleagues here today, and one thing we're working through is our 2026 operating plan for the company. And so when you think of this idea of goals and milestones, I think the risk in Vedanta is it's not that goals are bad necessarily. I think it's that the attachment to the outcome is the danger. And so in this,
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Say more, because that's exactly spot on, because it's there is caution to how we set goals, but an incredible import placed upon setting goals.
The goals are a framework, ideally, for the higher ideal. So let's say in a company, and it's fairly complex, or very complex in my mind, finding this line between serving, for example, our clients versus having goals, like metrics, to guide that value creation, if you will, to use a business term. But really, it's how do we serve our clients? Finding this line of not getting too attached, though, to the numbers and the goalposts. How do you navigate not getting attached but still using goals for the purpose of the higher ideal? That's so important in Vedanta.
Well, since you know that subtle difference,
Yeah,
and that framework, and to repeat, it's there's infinite value in setting goals. What's the first thing you do when you jump into a taxi cab? You say where you want to go. And yet what's so hilarious is, and it's not even hilarious, it's sad. Many of us live lives where that's like the last thing we've done. We know instinctively if you jump into a taxi cab, if you don't say where you want to go, you're not going to end up there. But we often live lives, and it makes total sense in our teenage years or maybe in our 20s to explore, because we don't really know where the destination might be. But to find ourselves decades into life still being like the equivalent of the metaphor being like in the taxi cab being like, take a left, go right. Just go a couple miles down the road, and then wondering why 3 hours later you're like, where the hell am I? Where did I end up? This isn't where I wanted to go. And yet we live our lives where it's like, let's go over there. Let's try that. Let's try this. Try that. And success, I think it's so valuable to either, and Jeff Bezos says this famously as well, start with success and work backwards. So start where you want to end up, taxi cab, life, the next year, the next 5 years in your career, even personally. Start from success, work backwards. And Swami, the teacher, the founder of the ashram, says this all the time as well. Wisdom is the capacity to see the end in the beginning. So see the end, see where you want to end up, and then work backwards. But do not be, and this is the subtle distinction, don't be attached to the outcomes. So set goals, because if you don't, you might flounder. And you might just be in a season of life where you want to wander because you don't know where the goals are. But at a certain point, there is a lot of value in saying, okay, now I've wandered enough, and in terms of exploring different potential goals, now I really want to see some goals come to light, especially if you care about service for yourself, for your community. All right, I want to put some goals around this for the month, for the year, but start from success, work backwards. Swami will say, start 30 years out. Once you know where you want to end up, start 30 years out. Then half it, 15 years. Where do you need to be if you want to be 30 years out? 15 years, which 30 years, I will admit, that's an eon for any of us to think through. But it really gets you to elevate the sights Because if you're thinking through like what you want to happen in the next day, you're going to bring your sights quite low to the realm of practicality, so to speak. But if you start 30 years out, it might be something really vague, but really big. And then you go 15, and then you half that, 7.5. All right, where do you need to be? 3.5 years, where do you need to be? 1.5 years, where do you need to be? 9 months, where do you need to be? In 4.5 months, where do you need to be? In 2 months, where do you need to be in a month? It actually is really, really, I mean, it's fascinating how powerful that becomes to tell you what you want to do in the next week, or what you want to accomplish, what you need to accomplish in the next few days, in the next day. In the exact same way that the taxi, once it knows, all right, we're going to East 57th Street, you know exactly where you're going to make the next turn. You know what you're going to do 100 feet up. So it becomes extremely valuable for your direction to have the goals. But the subtle distinction is to not have attachment to the goals. Before I say any more, since you know the framework, you know that subtle distinction, how has that played into the 2026 goal setting for Reva runs a fractional CFO firm for a number of different brands, including Magic Mind, and it's a complex business that you run with many different clients, and everyone has their own problems, their own tactics that they're working through. How did you work through this?
Still working through it, still learning. I would say the shift in the approach this year versus I used to run a software company 5 years ago when we were setting OKRs and goals is, yes, you have revenue milestones, you have financial metrics, but those are secondary towards how are we creating value for our clients. So focusing on the themes, the more qualitative aspects, and then downstream of that is how do we align the team? How do we invest in the right areas to first and foremost just deliver value to our clients? That is the service aspect of Vedanta. We know who we want to serve. Then it's how do we serve? How do we scale our ability to serve and deepen our ability to serve? So it's a very different orientation. Some of the output may look the same, but I think that orientation is where the conversation starts versus wrapping around it.
Where would 20-something Reva, startup founder, running big, massive teams, where would you have done that differently?
So, for example, a software company used to run, it was after we raised a pretty material round, increased our on-paper valuation to $68 million. All this pressure to basically fill into that valuation, as many founders will know, once you raise a big round. The work has just begun. And so the mentality that you're surrounded with too, as well as the internal kind of overachiever culture that I grew up in was, okay, how do we get to 10 million in revenue? And then the implicit thing that no one says is at all costs. So does that mean I work 120 hours a week and send looms at 2 a.m, which I did, thinking I was a badass? Does it mean I just send 20 more cold emails a day to find our clients? Or do whatever it takes, right? Versus setting the principles and values first. What is the driver of value that gets us there? Focus on the input, not the output. That's the conversation shift now versus that was literally 4 years ago when I was in that same exact scenario.
You nailed it on inputs over outputs. And to bring this into practical advice and goal setting, and what's so powerful about this reframing. And Bezos is so brilliant. I'm convinced Bezos studies this philosophy each day because he will use phrases from this philosophy quite often. He talks about experiments with truth, and that's Gandhi's autobiography is called Experiments with Truth. And he will talk about my commitment is not to. It is famous quote of his that I would rephrase, or that I would reuse it when I was running my last company in Silicon Valley. When we had sold to Airbnb, I would use this phrase all the time, and people would like attribute it to me, and I'd be like, no, it's Jeff Bezos. And he would say, my commitment is, and it's funny because it's actually a Gandhi quote that I didn't realize until years later, but he would say, my commitment is, and our commitment collectively should be to truth, not to consistency. So sometimes your goal setting, if you are rooted in service in the higher, And it's almost like the North Star, if you're north on your compass, tells you where north is. You actually don't need to go north. You just use that. It'll tell you everywhere you want to go. If you don't have that, you might end up just completely stranded on an island that you didn't foresee. You're shipwrecked there, and you're like, oh shit, I have no idea where we are. But if you know where north is, you can navigate from here to Tokyo, just knowing where north is. 200, 300 years ago, before GPS, just knowing where north is, and you have a couple maps, you know where north is, it orients you to be able to get 10,000 miles away and arrive there. If your north is, in this philosophy, is service to the higher, service to each other. It doesn't need to be spiritual. It can just be service to your community. It reorients you from like, we need to get to 10 million in revenue to, okay, we hear from our customers that we need to be building this, and this in the next 2 quarters to be of better service for them. Keep hearing from our customers we're falling short on this, and this, and service. It's a complete reorientation. It's, that north on your compass becomes, it's really palpable. And it's freakishly more practical than the abstract 10 million in revenue, which you could go in a million different directions towards when it's rooted in service. You could have a dog walking business, and if it's rooted in service, it could be a personal fitness goal. We have 3 little daughters, and I knew when I was not fit enough to carry them, my lower back hurt. It was like, I have to start doing yoga 3 times, like intense, power yoga 3 times a week to be able to carry them, put them into weird, angled car seats and not pull my back, because I pulled my back one Christmas and could not fly home, was here solo during Christmas while my wife had to do everything back in Texas. So that service around being fit was a game changer to do it around service versus just like, selfish physique reasons. And that reorientation, then you tie in this reframing of inputs over outputs. You can't really control outputs. You can't really control 10 million in revenue. You can do things to try to get there, but we're both startup founders, so in the startup lens, it's very difficult to control outputs. It's very difficult for even Tom Brady to control how many touchdowns they're going to get in a game. Like that's very difficult. But he can control the accuracy, the freakish accuracy of his passes and the practice, the inputs, the things that you can control. So by focusing on the inputs, something that you can control, then you wake up 7 days in, 70 days in, 700 days into the things that you can control, and you still have control 700 days in, and the outputs start to take care of themselves. But it's in our cultural nature to focus on outputs, to get attached to outputs. And you not only feel very discouraged when the outputs don't map up to, like, I said I was going to throw 5 touchdown passes, and it just didn't pan out. You could get kind of unnecessarily discouraged by that, but also forget the larger game is it's not 70 days in, it's not 7 days in, it's not our yearly goals for a business, 2026. It's not a yearly goal for us personally, 2026. It's 3 years in, 7 years in, 11 years in, 17 years in. And it is great reframing to focus on service, because it changes the energy we bring to our goals. And it's not being attached to outcomes and the outputs, but cultivating a really close attention to the inputs, the things that we can control. The last thing I'll say on this is, even on the inputs, some elbow room to getting too attached to the inputs is critical, because any attachment to the inputs, any attachment especially to what you're going to get out of it, will destroy your energy over time, even if you're focusing on the inputs. Focusing on, okay, I can't control how much weight I'm going to lose in the next 30 days, but I can control how many times I'm going to the gym. If you still cultivate an attachment to that, the personal, selfish rewards, the fruits of that, it will dissipate your energy over time. And that's why it's so beneficial to go back to the service. Why am I doing this? Is it for myself, or is it for my community? You can find great ways to reorient personal goals to your community, you'll just end up with a lot more energy generation when you remind yourself this is for my community, when you orient it for this is for my community, whether it's losing weight or whether it is generating, I don't know, go from 15 to 75 successful client relationships. It could still be the same goals, but the energy you bring with it is totally different. The definition of right action in this philosophy is that which generates energy.
You can control how much weight you lose in a month, very simply.
Oftentimes, if you, I'd say there's so many caveats to that though. Because someone could say, I want to lose an impractical amount, and then they can't control it. So there's a reframing on 3 levels, and you can think about it like going from here to Tokyo. You have a goal. You want to end up in Tokyo. You might acknowledge, okay, that's an output. What can I control? Well, the North Star would be service with this philosophy and many philosophies, but you could take it or leave it. But within this philosophy, the North Star is service for those around you. If there's an articulation of the purpose of life in this philosophy, it's to find where you can be uniquely useful to those around you. Each word of that sentence matters. Finding out where each one of you can be uniquely useful to those around you. Uniquely. So it's through a lot of internal work, you realize, okay, there's already a bunch of people that do this, and I'm not really wired for that. What am I uniquely wired for? There's a reorientation to usefulness to those around you. Usefulness, not using others. Immanuel Kant talked a lot about do not make others instruments for your personal gain. So unique usefulness is you becoming the instrument for your community gain instead of here are my goals, and I'm going to look around and see who can help me get what I want. And you accidentally turn those around you into instruments. Kant also followed that up and said, and most of all, don't make yourself an instrument to your own personal gain. Make yourself an instrument to your community gain, but we can burn ourselves out by being like, I did this in my 20s, sent myself to the ER, being like, I'm going to work 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, and I'm going to use up this thing. And didn't go to the gym, didn't take care of myself. I'm going to use this thing up, burn this thing out, because future me is going to be so happy with some, I don't know, financial milestone or something. But this reframing towards uniquely useful to those around you. So not uniquely useful to yourself, uniquely useful to those around you. You're going to end up with quite a bit of orientation towards service. That's the North Star. Then to where you're gliding, where you're going from, to continue the metaphor from here to Tokyo, you're gliding. Instead of rowing a boat, you could maybe get there by rowing. Or throw up a sail. Use the natural forces of the universe around you. You sail there with 1/1000th the energy. You get there and you're energized instead of, I'm going to row there. And that is through the principle of it's called Swadharma. And this philosophy, I've got a daily podcast for this philosophy called the Daily Vedantic. And I talk about Swadharma on there a lot because listeners often want to talk about this principle of Swadharma, which is your nature. Aligning your work, your 2026 work, your January work, to your nature, what you're wired for. That's how you wake up 3 hours into that journey from here to Tokyo, and you're sailing instead of rowing, instead of being like, I gotta just grind it out with this job, which that is the cultural communication to many of us. It's like, you just gotta grind it out. And I can tell you with Magic Mind, I've grinded out with businesses, sent me to the ER, had about 16, 17 months of not only burnout, but depression, totally just a shade of myself. And I think we got that business like $200K in revenue. Magic Mind, I think I said this last time, is that we reached last year. We reached 50 million in revenue, and I've never had a stressful night sleep. I've never woken up in the middle of the night. 5 years building the business. It's been a total sailing, kind of gliding approach. And then the last thing is, those are kind of like alignment on the grand scale. Every day, every hour, it's reorienting to the higher, pulling the selfish mind away from this natural tendency to think about outcomes, what I'm going to get if we achieve these goals, and reorienting, like, looking down the compass, making sure you're reorienting back to North Star, reorienting back towards the higher, towards service, towards what this product could do for people, what this management approach can do for the team, but a constant reorientation, just like getting in the taxi and just checking, and if you're driving it, checking on the GPS. Am I going in the right direction? Am I going in the right direction? Probably every hour, but I'd say maybe 10 years ago when I started on this philosophical journey, it was checking in every morning, every day.
Alex and Ernest are right there, so they're going to hold me accountable after this meeting. We have a conversation to go through 2026 planning where we talk about the inputs and not resist the temptation to focus on the numbers. So you all hold me accountable later today. One thing, it sounds so simple when we talk about focusing on inputs. I think we've all heard this in one way or the other. Let's talk about the minefield. Like, what are the gotchas that pull us away from this focus? So if we're studying every morning and then we go to the real world after 6 a.m., whether it's scrolling social media and being influenced by the headlines of other founders raising money, or if you're an artist, someone getting, a big concert or show where you're still performing in your bedroom. All these comparisons that can distract you. The idea of the body, mind, and intellect as these three facilities is very important in Vedanta, where your body, you mentioned the example of taking care of your body for higher service. If it's not taken care of, you can't serve your family. You can't be there for them. The mind as really the emotions that can either steer you off course or be leveraged and channeled in a proper way for higher ideals. And then your intellect, which is the charioteer, managing your mind. Can you talk to us about how you've developed your intellect and the importance of that in retaining focus on this relatively simple but elegant philosophical framework and approach to life?
Yeah, this and for anybody interested, the whole philosophy is summed up in episode 1 of Daily Vedantic in 15 minutes. The whole philosophy is super simple, and the 3 daily practices of it are so simple and yet radically transformative. And you touched on waking up before 6. I could probably hear some people in the audience if they're like, dude, I just came to this thing on the calendar of Lighthouse, and these guys are talking about waking up super early and doing something daily, and that is not by accident. That's this. We talked about attachment to outcomes. You could summarize the whole Bhagavad Gita. This is the most famous poem in the world, the Bhagavad Gita. It's a 30-minute dialogue between a warrior prince and his charioteer. And I ask myself this all the time, how the hell did I not come across this until I was like 30? I think maybe in like 8th grade social studies, I came across it, but did not. In the next 100 years, I have a feeling there's going to be a levee that breaks where there's an interest towards this dialogue, this poem that, like I said, you could read in 30 minutes. But because it's so damn valuable for everyone, especially like us in the West. Ironically, I think it's perhaps more valuable for us in the West, where we are like ready for battle. We're relatively adversarial culture, where we don't view ourselves in our communities as like communities of shared values, communities of shared traditions. America is arguably the world's first non-traditional today in 2026, arguably the world's first non-traditional society, meaning that we don't have shared traditions that we all acknowledge. I actually do not know if our neighbors to our left or right celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah. I don't know if they celebrate anything. Don't know if they celebrate Thanksgiving. That is a very unique culture for us to find ourselves in, where we don't have shared traditions. And it's neither good nor bad, but it is a bit of a free fall into the future, where We don't know where this is going to go, where we don't have an agreed upon shared traditions. From those traditions, you could ostensibly take shared values, but we don't know what the shared values are. That's why we're all running around kind of finding really cool co-working spaces like Lighthouse to try to find people that are of the same ilk, that have similar shared values. And even then you have coffee with someone you don't really know, do we have shared values? And it's a uncertain thing to find ourselves in, where you have minimal shared values and maximal volume on go get yours. Go get yours. You have to get yours, especially in the expensive, financial expenses of Los Angeles, where it's like, you better get yours or you won't be able to last here, which is kind of the implication many of us get every day. You got to get yours. So why, I mean, it's no surprise that we wake up in kind of in terms of relativity, it's pretty adversarial nature, where it's like other people against me. Other people are succeeding more, and building startups, certainly in the startup realm, where you go to lunch with a friend and they closed a round for $1.5 million, and you're like, congratulations, what the fuck, with your business? Wait, what? That's a shit business. And we all feel like we're on our own. And this dialogue is about of this warrior prince and this charioteer. It's right before this massive battle, this huge civil war, and the biggest battle of the Civil War. I think we did touch on this last time. That it is this epic battle of this massive civil war based in India. This is 2,500 years ago, and it's 13 years in the making. And this warrior prince, the most famous warrior prince in the land, same as Arjuna, he's been like the biggest proponent to make this battle happen, because he and his brothers have been ousted from the kingdom that they rightfully are the heirs to. So he has all of the moral justification. For 13 years, he has all the talent for the battle. And yet right before this battle happens, he asks his charioteer, Krishna, to drive him to the middle of the battlefield. He's like, I want to survey both sides. Really, he's kind of freaking out. He wants distance from his other soldiers and his army. So he go to the middle of the battlefield, and he sees just how outmanned they are. Like 20-1. And he's like, yeah, we're on the side of righteousness, but oh, fuck. And he has this huge breakdown. He throws down his bow, gets out of the chariot, and he's like, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be doing this. He drops to his knees, and he's like, Krishna, get me out of this. And Krishna, the charioteer, turns out to not be just his charioteer and his childhood friend. Turns out to be a symbolic embodiment of God. So the next 30 minutes, 700 verses of this little poem, the next 30 minutes is this dialogue between this warrior prince, all the capability in the world, all of the moral righteousness in the world, and still afraid of the battle. Throwing down his bow, can't even stand up, having this dialogue with his charioteer on what to do. That is all of us. That is all of us. Whether you have a civil war in front of you or not, and we live in a world where that's very true for many people, or whether it is metaphorically, it's the battle within our hearts. It's the battle within ourselves. It's the battle with our lesser selves. It ain't the people that wronged us. It's not some external circumstance where you got kicked out of a kingdom and you want to get back in that beautiful palace, and it's like a selfish pursuit against these wrongful enemies outside of yourself. It's actually the civil war within ourselves to our lesser nature that's saying, man, we got to get ours. And then that little voice in the head that says, do we need to get ours? Or do I have this capability to serve that I might not be listening to? And that number that's Indians. You guys and your numbers. Love numbers. And that number is pretty spot on. They do. It's like, Reva, can you comment on that?
Indians and their numbers? Yeah, I mean, yeah. 100%.
There you go. Say no more.
Especially South. I'm a South Indian, 100%. That's
Yeah.
where the number 0 was invented, effectively
That's right.
discovered, and or like human calculators for
Yeah.
sure.
So phenomenal
Stereotype's true.
appreciation.
I can say that. Yeah.
And within this philosophy, each number has so much significance, and you never need to actually like look into the significance of the numbers if you don't want to. It's not core to understanding the philosophy. I don't think the overview of the philosophy in episode 1 of Daily Vedantic touches on many numbers, but that 20 to 1, that's pretty accurate in my experience. Like my selfish desire to go and get mine, to get more. Well, if I don't get more, what's going to happen? It's about 20 to 1. It's a faint voice that's outnumbered. But, man, it is energizing when you listen to that voice. It's like, you know what? We're going to have this battle anyhow. I'm going to overcome these voices that are saying, yeah, but you got to get yours. Oh, well, what happens if you're not thinking about number 1? And when you lean into that metaphorical direction of Arjuna, who ends up, by the end of this 30-minute dialogue, ends up getting up, grabbing his bow, fights the battle, and they win the battle. That is it's such a beautiful guide for all of us, because when you do listen to that seemingly minority voice, but when you listen to it, the entire universe works with you. I mean, just imagine your most selfish coworker you work with today or you have worked with in the past. Like visualize a really selfish coworker or a really selfish friend. We all have an example that you could think of. Really selfish friend that you might not be friends with anymore. A really dramatic, perhaps selfish coworker comes to mind. How much of the organization helped that person? Like how much of the universe really helped that friend or that coworker? Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, think through the most selfless coworker you've ever worked with. I can immediately think of this guy, Lenny, at Airbnb. Think through the most selfless coworker you worked with, and think about all of the resources that conspired for that person. Maybe not 10 out of 10 times, but 9 out of 10 times scenarios, just the whole ecosystem supported that person. Each one of us gets to be that person. Where, you maybe get slighted here and there. Someone takes advantage of you here and there. Alan Watts would put it at 1 out of 10 times. You do the right thing and someone takes advantage of it 1 out of 10 times. 9 out of 10 times, your whole community just recognizes, oh, this is a precious, rare individual that is really selfless or unselfish in their approach to their work. We need to protect them. We need to give them promotions. Lenny was, this guy, Lenny Rachitsky, has, I think he has the most profitable newsletter on Substack. And 8 years after Airbnb, helping people constantly, loved within Airbnb walls. Didn't have a big title or anything. Then he turns to Substack, starts writing a newsletter to help other product managers. Not only did the world love and support him at Airbnb, but afterwards. He's hit every financial milestone he's ever had. He told me about a year ago with this newsletter, by just offering help, being helpful. So that listening to that inner voice, that metaphorical civil war that we have within ourselves, that battle, saying yes to the battle and being like, yeah, I'm going to fight the lesser nature. That's really loud. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to overcome it. The universe is there to support you. It is built to support you. It's like air pressure. It will just support you when you start listening to it. And it will be scary when you start listening to it. But the 18th chapter of the Gita, a principle within the 18th chapter is so beautiful in that it says, surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. That is the GPS coordinates. And it's so beautiful in so many ways. One, it's not GPS coordinates of like a 4-hour road trip. It's not 4 hours away. It's not 4 years down the road. It's not like start serving other people. Reorient your 2026 goals towards how can we serve 30 customers to help them with X, Y, Z instead of how do we get to 5 million in revenue. That reorientation doesn't result in like years down the road you'll feel energized by it. Immediate peace follows. You put those coordinates in the GPS, a real resolution to, okay, surrender to a duty-bound existence. Another way of saying that is a surrender to your unique usefulness to those around you. Which you might know, and you might have been on the battlefield, quote unquote, resisting for the last 5 years, where you kind of know, like, shit, I know I'm supposed to do this. But I'm so afraid of what it's going to look like to my parents. I'm so afraid of what it's going to look like to, the conversations I'm going to have, or how fearful, how am I going to cover rent? You might have known it for the last 5 years and you surrender into it, or you might not know it and it requires the next several days of journaling, ideally before the sun comes up, because that's when the world pulls us outside of ourselves, but it could be at 7 a.m., 8 a.m. Grab your morning coffee, grab your morning Magic Mind, and get your journal, 15 minutes. What am I uniquely useful in my community within? What's being asked of me that I almost ignore? What do I help people with that I kind of almost like discount because that's not that it's not that exciting, it's not that exotic, but people seem to come to me for this over and over again. And this is the great question to figure out your Swadharma. What is the thing that you would do if the only reward of doing it is that you got to do more of it? What's the thing you do, the afternoons or the evenings or the holidays, the topic that you love, the thing that you would want to do, that you'd even pay to be able to do more of it? Prague, his sister is right here. Priya Prague's actually in India. He might be at the ashram. I know he was visiting it during his time there. And he's one of the members of Venice Vedanta Club and knew nothing about this philosophy. And then like 2 years later was planning trips to India to go see this ashram that we study with, and he found this articulation. It's really great of finding your Swadharma is what's something that, and I just said it. What is something that you would do where the only reward of doing it is that you got to do more of it? You're not doing it to burn yourself up so you can get some financial outcome. You're not doing it for some validation, for name, fame, power, status, wealth, spouse. You're not doing it for anything external other than, I just love doing this. I'm going to do more of it. That might help you in your journaling towards what's the battle you've pushed away so much that you almost forget that that's an option, or you don't even realize that that's an option. That 5% voice, that subtle voice within you, if you give it some space, starts to get louder and louder, and that you say yes to, and it might be scary. But what is so damn cool about this articulation, this principle in the 18th chapter, surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. It's not 4 hours. It ain't 4 months. It ain't 4 years. It's not 40 years down the road. It'll all pay off. Immediate peace follows. Like you will see it within 30 minutes, 40. There was one thing that I pushed off for 5 years. Finally, on the umpteenth time of reading the Gita, come across that in the 18th chapter. 3 blocks from here. This was 2.5 years ago. So 7.5 years into this philosophy, studying it every day. I still was like, nah, I don't want to do that. That'd be too hard. And then I finally said yes to it, being like, fuck it, this is going to burn me up. The last thing I did like this, send me to the ER. It's so hard to do. Entrepreneurship is really, really hard. And I was already building Magic Mind. But I was like, I don't have the bandwidth for that. It will kill me, potentially. Then I was like, surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. I've said this so many times. I've read this so many times. Okay, I'm going to do it. 45 minutes later, it was like 2 tons were lifted off my chest. I still expected to be like, it'll be like weeks or months from now when I'll feel that peace. But there's no mincing of the words. Surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. It was quite immediate.
What was the decision?
It was to start a company called APT, which is the first AI-powered personality and aptitude test and career coach. And it was built around how could software help people find their Swadharma? So it's, I guess on one level I felt like I'd be shilling it to mention it just then, but it's a good continuation if you want to discover your Swadharma. We've spent 2.5 years. 2.5 years building out this software called APT, and it's a 5 to 10 minute quiz. that gives you all major personality test results back. Because I was sick of like taking one quiz that was 45 minutes, and then you chat with someone and they'd be like, you should take this other quiz, this other test. Oh, that's not as well studied and scientifically rigorous as the big five. So you take one quiz to rule them all. You get all major personality test results back. Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, although those are not as scientifically rigorously replicable as Big Five, which is the most rigorously studied. And but you get all of them back, including Big Five and DISC and Holland Code. And then you can ask it a million questions, and I will give you all a free promo code. It's $150, but you guys can do it for free if you use this promo code, APTPRO100. So all one word, APTPRO100. And then it also tells you the top 50 jobs you're wired for and real-time job openings for those jobs. But you might not be a job seeker right now. You just want a bit more insight into what you are uniquely wired for. And this uses 300 billion data points through AI to tell you something you might have thought, I thought everybody was really good at this. And you realize you're in the top 1 percentile of people in this or that type of wiring. And when I'd had that idea 5 years before, so this was 7 years ago, had that idea for 5 years, and I chose to build Magic Mind instead of a software company, even though software was my background, because software companies, you can spend 3 years and not know you have some. You could go out and raise $10 million, 8 engineers for 3 years, and then just shut down shop because you're like, no, we don't have product market fit. Those 3 years wasted. And I just knew from managing 100 people in a tech startup, even if it was successful, God, it's just such a grind to manage people. And I was like, even if this is successful, that's even worse, managing 1,000 people. And we've got it so good with a small team in Magic Mind and our girls and surfing all the time. So I was like, I don't want to add any complexity, but then had conversation after conversation with friends in their late 30s, early 40s that were like, I still don't. They're like, I wonder what I should be doing. And I was like, God, there's 8 billion people on the planet. And it seems like the vast, vast majority have no idea what they're really wired for, what they should be doing with the majority of our waking hours with our careers. So the problem got too large in my head. And then saw this Gallup study that said 96% of people do not love the work that they do. And 58% are not engaged with the work that they do. They're just kind of phoning it in. Only 4% of people love the work that they do. And I was like, what would the world look like if 8 billion people were doing what they were wired to do? So that was what I said yes to. And then, it was crazy. I said yes to it. And then a mutual friend of ours, I called him up and said, Ajay, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about this idea. And an AI-powered personality and aptitude test tells people what they're wired for, and with one 5-10 minute quiz. And he goes, oh, dude, this was 2.5 years ago. So he's like, oh, you should build that on GPT 3.5. It should all be text-based. And I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, that would be so much better than like a whole lot of software. This could be a lot easier to build. And then it has been like a hot knife through butter. So it really has. We found product market fit within months, and it has been it's grown faster than even Magic Mind.
That's such a good example, and I wanted to follow up on that. So we're the finance partner to Apt as well. We get to work with your co-founder Tomas, which is amazing to work with. So you could have easily said, I don't have the bandwidth. The mind throws up obstacles and roadblocks saying, I just can't do this. I don't have the time, bandwidth, etc. This is an example to me, but you correct me if I'm wrong, where you have this ideal. Instead of the mind throwing up obstacles saying, no, it's not possible. I have Magic Mind, my daughters, being a husband, all your other obligations, duty. You create the form that makes it possible. For example, partnering with a co-founder instead of maybe running things yourself from the beginning. Prioritizing, product, prioritizing being lean so you don't have the same obligations as if you were to raise $20 million in funding, which I'm sure you could have. Can you talk to us about that? That seems to me like an example of the intellect regulating the mind, where the mind may say, no, it's not possible, but if you're just really in tune with your intellect, like you make it happen.
Yeah, that's you touched on the body, mind, intellect, and I didn't elaborate on that before, and I talk about that in episode 1 of Daily Vedantic. That is the sailing versus rowing. That is where you wake up and 5 years in, and it's you. Like I used to wake up with my last company, and be like at 2 a.m. be like, oh my God, like my reality was a nightmare. So hard, so friggin' hard, and I knew it was a nightmare of my own making. Magic Mind, I still to this day I've never woke up in the middle of the night really even thinking about it, because it was kind of a surrender to its in its own way, apt even more so. But the body, mind, intellect, this is perhaps the central contribution of this philosophy. I've never heard this in any other philosophy. You see it closely articulated in Socrates and in Plato, but it's explicit and it's a foundational aspect of this philosophy where we have 3 equipments to navigate the world. And people in Venice Vedanta Club that we have been meeting for 3 years heard it ad nauseum. And yet it's still such a great reminder because you don't hear it anywhere else than this philosophy. And that is, you have 3 equipments to navigate the world. A body, not revolutionary. No one's going to be like, oh, that's news. You have a mind, same. People are like, generally, like, oh yeah, body and a mind to navigate the world. But this philosophy says you have another internal equipment beyond the mind to navigate the world, intellect. The intellect guides the mind guides the body. The mind is the 20, it's the army on the other side that's 20 times the size. So the mind, you start to discover your mind when you're 5, 7, 8 years old. The body obviously is the physical form we walk around in. The mind is our emotional side. It's where our feelings are. It's where our likes and our dislikes are. It's our preferences. It's the kind of flowy stuff that's you feel agitation. You feel anger towards someone or something. The intellect is a step removed, and it is almost like a balcony in which you watch these things happen. In the same way it takes years to develop the body, then it takes years to develop the mind. It takes years to develop the intellect. It's always there. The body is always there. The mind is always there. The intellect is always there. But when you invest in it, like building a muscle, you invest in this capacity to see the end in the beginning, this capacity to observe the mind. And like I said, you already have this. You may already do this. But when you invest in this capacity to observe the mind, you start to build this elbow room from your feelings, from your thoughts, from your emotions, and you recognize like, oh shit, I really messed up in the way that I reactively sent that email. I shouldn't have done that. And now I feel a bit of shame, a bit of embarrassment, and the intellect is your capacity to just look at that. Not pile on more emotion and be like, well, now I'm going to write another email and I got to escape this embarrassment. You're just like, yeah, I deserve this. I need to just sit with it for a little while. Because if I don't sit with it, if I escape with, I don't know, bottom of a bottle, if I escape with another email, I'm not going to learn my lesson. And my intellect is telling me, yeah, I'm 27, I'm 45. I probably just need to learn this lesson to not send reactive emails. So I'm going to sit with this, and it's going to take 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. But it will subside, and I'll be much less likely to send reactive emails or reactive texts to a boss or a coworker, to a friend, if I just sit with this and really let it do its work. That's the intellect. 1 in 10,000 people have that capacity to sit with something like that. But when you do, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And then the capacity to see the end in the beginning. Then you recognize like, oh yeah, shit. You don't even have the temptation to send that email or text because you're like, oh yeah, the last time I did that 2 years ago. Yeah, I haven't done it in 2 years because I know how bad it feels. It's so great when you develop that intellect. And it is described in this philosophy. It's like a river where the mind is like the river and the intellect is like the banks of the river. Weak banks, the river will flood the plainlands, kill all the livestock, destroy all the crops, and it floods and it's devastation every 18 months when a river has poor banks. and no one builds the cities, much less their homes near it. But a river with strong banks, like the Nile, you have multiple civilizations build right on top of that river because the banks are so strong. The Ganges, thousands of years, especially where the banks are strong. You have Rishikesh, it's been there it's one of the oldest cities in the world. Then you have rivers that don't have strong banks, or parts of rivers that don't have strong banks, and it's suckers that build and then get destroyed every year and a half, every 4 years. So it's the same for our lives. Build strong banks, man, you can build one hell of a life with a powerful river, powerful mind, but strong banks. If you don't have strong banks, and all of us in this room, anybody, and Americans especially, really strong minds. Anybody in this room, especially if you've immigrated here, you're not American, strong mind. But if you don't have powerful banks, then that's a strong river with no banks, and maybe it resonates with you if every 18 months I do something that kind of self-sabotages what I've been doing. That's, by the way, that's the through line with philosophy, therapy, religion. The common thread in all of these is how to avoid self-sabotage, which is something telling for us, whether it's service on a Sunday or whether it is 3 sessions of therapy 10 years in. There's a recognition of I need help to avoid self-sabotage. Of course, the first few sessions or first years, it might be about something that happened to you, something you're working through. It might be an affliction, it might be a genetic affliction that you might have. It's just a hard hand that's been dealt. But eventually, therapy or religion, it gets to a place where it's like, yeah, this is a hard hand I was dealt, but I'm the one that keeps sabotaging myself by making X, Y, Z choices. The intellect is the capacity to make the right choice or the wrong choice, right action. That's that which generates energy, wrong action, which dissipates energy. And it's the intellect that if you develop it, and the way to develop is the 3 daily practices of this philosophy, which I touched on and didn't elaborate on before as well. It's to study and reflect daily, to question everything, to not take anything for granted. So the first practice is to question everything. Question everything you've been told, which is, it's not hyperbolic language. It's literal language. Question everything you've been told. Who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Question everything. Otherwise, you're just borrowing other people's thinking. Then, don't take anything for granted. That hard hand you've been dealt, maybe it's the best thing for you and your community, and you just don't know it. Maybe that cancer diagnosis. Jeff, who's sat up here for these before and been coming to Venice Vedanta Club for years, said here maybe a year ago when we were doing one of these, that a cancer diagnosis was single best thing that ever happened in his life in terms of the shift that it led to. That's don't take anything for granted. Also not hyperbolic. Don't take anything for granted. The good and the bad, maybe even especially the bad, the seemingly bad. Then the last daily practice is study, reflect daily. The problem. So if we're talking about like solutions or approaches, practices, or right action, how to avoid self-sabotage, the problem, according to this philosophy and most major philosophies, shares it with Buddhism, word for word, is our attachment, our desires. This philosophy says that all of our suffering comes down to our attachments. Our personal, selfish attachments. Another word for that you could say is desires. Our personal, selfish desires. All of our suffering comes down to that single thing, attachments and our desires. So if you are like, man, I really loved that conversation in Venice weeks ago or months ago, and it's sporadic, and you read a book here and there, it will largely do as much good as going to the gym once every 3 months. To develop the intellect, it's daily. And it might only require 10, 15 minutes for you, but it's daily reflection on timeless wisdom. And like I said earlier, it could be St. Augustine, it could be Plato, it could be Vedanta treatise. It's my favorite thing to recommend. Vedanta treatise is like beginning to end, soup to nuts explanation of this philosophy in really simple terms by our teacher. It's 200 pages, super simple read, Vedanta treatise. And you can find it on Amazon. It sells out every once in a while in the U.S. Amazon store, but I think it's there now. So read 2 pages of that. 2 pages, 10 minutes, 15 minutes every morning with your morning cup of coffee. Journal and reflect on it. Don't just like take it in, but also reflect on how could that map to the things you're thinking through that day. Those 3 things develop the intellect. Those 3 things allow for you to see the end in the beginning. You make a choice on a Tuesday that impacts something 30 years down the road, and you almost see how it's going to impact it. You make a choice perhaps to surrender to a duty-bound existence, and then you're like, holy shit, the wind is just picking up the sail, and it's effortless, because that is how life should be. Surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. What it feels like day to day is like, how is this happening? Like a surfer on a wave, where the wave takes years to in the beginning, build up the muscles, to build up the wave selection. But then you're just choosing waves that do all the work for you. And it's the best surfers in the world. It's like 3 paddles, boom, boom, pop up. They're riding 300 yards down the face of a wave, and it's doing all the work. They're just gliding. That is how it should work. It is not the grind culture. It's not the you should do hard things and it should be hard. That's the shit of a militaristic culture to get soldiers to do things. Like, you should grind it out and you should destroy yourself. That's not a peaceful, harmonious cultural viewpoint. That is a militaristic culture built on, yeah, it's supposed to be hard. And yeah, you might die. And it should be miserable. You got to grind it out for like something way down the road in terms of, I don't know, national welfare will benefit. That is how you get 18-year-olds to sign their lives away. That's not how you build a culture where someone is 25 years in and still gliding, generating energy, feeling more energy in what they're doing day 70 than day 7, more energy on day 7 than day 1, more energy on day 7,000 than day 70. That is this. Question everything, don't take anything for granted, study, reflect daily on timeless philosophy. And you find that orientation to where not only did you make it to Tokyo with a sailboat and it didn't tax you at all, you're like, dude, let's sail the rest of the world and keep going. Did that answer your question on body, mind, intellect, by the way?
Absolutely. And then some.
Most long-worded ads, I apologize. I'm going extra long today.
That's great. There's a nuance in that because this took me a while. I'm still understanding this, but definitely at the beginning, when you hear that, it's like, sign me up. That's amazing. The implication, however, is not that when you're gliding and you're along this approach that you're not experiencing discomfort or pain, right? So my question to you is, can you contextualize that when you say you're gliding on this wave, it doesn't mean that you're just comfortable all the time, where it's just everything is just like euphoria. It's not that, right? And then what is the role of discomfort and pain in the gliding, surfing the wave approach?
2 things. And it's a great distinction. One is, if you're gliding with your nature, not only will this path minimize pain for you, but it gets less and less in terms of how much suffering that comes from that pain. The pain, as that phrase goes, pain is inevitable. Suffering is voluntary. And there's pain when you get into a cold plunge the first few times. It's like shocking your whole system. But then you start to associate it with how good you feel 15 minutes later and for the next 4 hours. You're in cloud 9. So the pain is still there the 400th time you do it. I think the body adjusts a little bit. But for the most part, it's still like years into having a cold plunge. Yesterday I was thinking, I was like, this is still hard. But there's not much suffering because you're like, I'm doing this because I'm going to feel so good on the other side of it. And ultimately, when I do it, any inflammation from a workout the day before, it lessens it. So it leads to an absolute or a relative decrease in pain. And also it's a reorientation of like, oh, there's pain. There's a pain in a good workout. I mean, it's like you're signing up voluntarily to pain, but you're not mentally like perhaps suffering. There's soreness the next day. But I love that feeling. Like, I love it. It's not like, oh, I'm suffering. I'm like, good. That was a good, I paid $45 for that class. I'm glad it actually was like worth it because, nothing's worse than paying $45 and spending 2 hours of your time in the class ends up being like not that hard. That when younger me would like laugh at even me saying that out loud. And then you crave that type of quote unquote pain. But it ends up being relatively less as well because you're just surrendering to your nature. It is actually like the surfer. The pain is there in the beginning to learn how to surf. Maybe you're wired to be a doctor. You're absolutely wired for it in all ways. But there's still going to be some suffering in the beginning to like the surfer, building those muscles. There's some suffering in there. There's some suffering of like, am I really good at this? Some internal questions. There's some suffering. There's pain around just getting blown up by choosing the wrong waves. In startups, one of the best big wave surfers in the world is a guy named Koa Rothman. I did a podcast episode with him years ago, and he asked, or I asked him, I said, what is the number one thing that older Koa would tell 15-year-old Koa Rothman? And he, without skipping a beat, he said, wave selection. Wave selection. It's such a nuanced answer. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, younger me, I would choose terrible waves, get super hurt, and really lucky to be alive because he was surfing like 20-foot faces on 1.5-foot water over reefs and pipeline in Hawaii. He's famous for these dangerous waves. And he was like, it's total wave selection. And he said sometimes he'll be out there for 3 hours waiting for the right wave. And he gets the right wave. Not only is safe, he gets the right line down the face of it, gets the right footage. That photo becomes the best photo of the entire year. And it was worth waiting 3 hours. So my wife and I, we surf, and I can hardly imagine going out to surf and waiting 30 minutes, 45 minutes, much less 3 hours with that discipline to wait for the right wave. And he just knows if he picks the wrong wave, maybe he's in a cast for 6 months and he can't get paid because he can't post videos of surfing. It's catastrophic, or he dies. So wave selection, that comes from a lot of pain of going into the wrong waves. If you're a founder, there's no ways around it to learn the wrong waves. But over time, if you're using your intellect of like, yeah, this is happening because I chose the wrong waves, chose the wrong business. I thought that was a shortcut. This was real trendy, and I built that crypto thing, and it blew up in my face, and I was not leaning into what I was uniquely wired for. I was chasing some financial milestone or something, and it blows up in your face. The intellect is what says, hey, how do I minimize this in the future? How do I learn from this maximally and minimize this in the future? And eventually you get to a place where you are surfing, you're popping up, and there's, like with Apt, with Magic Mind, started a third business as well called Side Dish, which you also help with. It is, the discomfort is so low compared to what it was in prior lives, in my 20s, that I barely notice it. Is the honest answer. And then I think it's, if you're not astounded, I said this on the Daily Vedantic a few weeks ago, if you're not astounded by how it's all working, and how it's all just working for you, if you're not astounded by it on a continual basis, you're doing it wrong. And that's so anathema. That's the polar opposite to what we've been wired to think of, like, it'll be great twice a year. It'll be great 10 years in. No, that is how people get you to do things for them that are against your nature. That's how they get you to fight in a battle or be a pawn in a startup that they're building. it should be so aligned with what you're wired for that you're astounded each day where you're like, I'm an engineer at Reddit or Spencer, and I'm astounded. How is this all working? How is this all happening? Spencer is an engineer at Reddit. At least he was a few months ago when still is. And he said this in our backyard during Venice Vedanta Club. If you don't mind me, it's not too personal to share. He said, it's like, yeah, one of the things I'm thinking through is I've accomplished everything I set out to. And it's all just going really well. And what should I do with this opportunity? That's how it should feel. That's not a feature that you experience, every once in a while. That is alignment, yourself, your nature with nature itself. We can turn it over to Q&A with the audience now if you want to, because of time.
Alex had a question. I know he had one last time, so we'll get to him first.
I wanted to kind of know both of your perspectives. I know that there is this level of detachment that's incredibly important in the Vedantic philosophy, but at the same time, when I look at some role models, I mean, obviously, Reva has detachment that I've learned to separate the outcomes and the inputs and everything into different components so that you have, a balance in your life so you can continuously succeed. But when I look, to potential other people I look up to, like, for example, Jensen Huang, he has this very famous quote. He says, I hope you suffer, because he says that if you suffer, you're immediately going to understand how hard everything is, and you're going to know how to get to that next step. How do you balance out, kind of a mentality of, I hope you suffer, and then kind of this detached Vedantic mentality that both of you guys have?
Good question. And your name again? Alex. Good question, Alex. Whenever I hear things like that from folks, it's Rick Rubin, the famous music producer. He said in an interview like 3 or 4 years ago when someone said, "Have you read this book?" And he said, and then the person said, "You should read it." And he goes, "Well, right now I'm not reading anything that isn't 1,000 years old." And I was like, "Whoa, that is what a cool line to say in a podcast." And then 2, like, wow, I never even considered a perspective like that, and then had to like try to dissect, like, what would create a perspective like that? Oh, he wants to just know what are the ideas that last 1,000 years or more. So when I hear someone like that, like or people that talk about obsession, you've got to be obsessed, like Mr. Beast, I heard him talking about obsession. You got to be obsessed. And I look at that and I'm like, their story's still being written. NVIDIA's story, Jensen, brilliant, beyond brilliant. There are some brilliant people out there that may or may not, I tend to think he probably has a pretty strong intellect. But there are many out there that are brilliant and have terrible intellects, like very weak intellects. And the story looks like it's amazing for a few years. I mean, I'm not saying this is the case, but people are saying that NVIDIA might be the Enron of our time because of the way that they're recycling money, investing in customers that then pay for their services. The circular deals. And I have no viewpoint on that. But I would just be very cautious of taking, this is the person in the limelight right now, and this is how they got there. Because there was even Steve Jobs, there's 2 different versions. One got fired from the company he started because he was so bad, so toxic. Spent 14 years in the wilderness because he got it so wrong. And yet was, at 23, worth $100 million and was so famous as this pioneer. He was spouting off, he was giving advice left and right. And after giving that advice, a few years later, he's fired from his own company because he was so detrimental, seen as so detrimental to the company. And then a very different version of him comes back to the company. And instead of being the prior version of like crazy obsession, he came back with a whole lot of detachment and became the Steve Jobs that ultimately is the one that we think of when we think of Steve Jobs today. And Jensen might be a similar story. Anybody could be a similar story. where it looks like, man, they've got it all figured out. And then you let the story play out a few more years, and you're like, all right, Jordan got 3 championships, so obsessed. Doesn't look like, I mean, a couple divorces, has not succeeded as an owner, was like seen pretty publicly as a terrible owner, not successful as an owner, wasn't successful in a few other areas. It's like, okay, maybe that's not exactly the equation. And ironically, though, with the Jordan example, he would say about basketball that he wanted to play baseball, but he realized he was better at basketball. He never chased championships, never chased like MVP titles, just had it, he didn't use the word surrender, but went into that sport because he was better at it than baseball, and just decided to outwork everybody. Perfect formula for decided to outwork everybody. There's a surrender and no obsession over outcomes. So there's a really, really healthy framework in many ways, but it didn't translate to other areas of his life. And so I would just be cautious of taking this person's in the limelight, saying it's done this way, and then applying it to our own lives, because who knows what has helped them become perhaps a momentary freak of nature in that moment in time. The last thing I'll say to that is culturally we often confuse wealth and wisdom. We confuse wealth for wisdom, and historically those never play out. Very rarely ever play out. Who was the wealthiest guy of the time of Christ? Who was the wealthiest person on the planet in 1921 when Einstein came up with, I think it was general relativity in 1921. Who was the wealthiest person, the Gutenberg press? Who was the wealthiest person, Darwin's theory? We actually don't, historically, we forget those people. But you've come to our like actual point in time, and we tend to think like Elon Musk is the smartest guy, or not saying you do, Alex, but many people are like, wealthiest person in the world must be the wisest. And we actually know, wait 100 years and those end up not playing out. They rarely ever play out that way. Yes?
I just want to add about Jensen. Like, I saw him speak at CES last year. He was literally drinking a beer on stage, and he was drunk with power and wealth. Like, it made me agree with your Enron statement. Like, who knows when that'll pop, but it was concerning.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it makes total sense, because it's like, okay, they have something special, and the world tends to agree, and how have they gotten it? But the story is still being written for many folks. So I would find what are the ideas that have lasted perhaps 1,000+ years. That detachment is so interesting. By the way, the Steve Jobs story. He went to his teacher. He had a guru in Japan, and I only know this from his chief of staff for 22 years, this guy James Higa, who's an advisor to Magic Mind, and he told our team this story, that he went to his guru in 1997. He went to his guru in Japan and said, I feel a calling to make udon noodles. I'm not making this up. This is and I had to like clarify this with his chief of staff. I was like, what? Say that again? He goes, he went to his guru, and he was there. His chief of staff, who's Japanese, was with him. He was like, I was there. It was the wildest thing. He said he knew that he was going to see his guru. He didn't know what for, because he would travel to Tokyo often. And so they went to Japan. Steve Jobs asks his guru, says, hey, I feel this calling to make udon noodles. And it's a known thing within Zen to practice the philosophy with action, with some flower arranging, archery, but use that pursuit of mastery to emphasize and reinforce the philosophical points. This philosophy is very similar. 97% of this philosophy is act, act, act. Action is the insignia of life. You can't be a philosopher sitting in lotus position in the Himalayas. You could pretend, but everybody knows that. Anybody's like calm and when they're sitting down quietly, and then they have like a 1.5-year-old in a tantrum for 47 minutes straight on aisle 5 of the grocery store, and it's like, okay, this is a little different than 27-year-old me practicing minimalism and sitting quietly with no 18-month-old going crazy. So he goes and asks him if he should do the make noodles, and then his guru says, "What is the other option?" And Steve said, "Well, they're asking me to come back to Apple, but that's just something that I have no interest in doing." It was 14 years ago when I was fired from that company, and I can't stand the people that are there now. And his guru said, "Go back to Apple. That's what you're wired for." So he had a very healthy detachment. Steve Jobs 2.0 in 1997. Very, very healthy detachment. And I'd say Apple's will have more of an impact than NVIDIA over time. Yes?
Many of us at the Lighthouse are storytellers or content creators. Do you have any suggestions to tie our work to a higher purpose?
Yes. That's a great question. Joseph Campbell, are you familiar with Joseph Campbell by any chance? So he's the great mythologist of the 20th century. He's a professor and studied all world mythologies. He also was the secretary of the Vedanta Society of New York, studied Vedanta every day, and very few people know this, but he studied Vedanta, this philosophy, every day. After surveying and seeing everything in the world, he's like, this seems to be the most accurate in his view and the most helpful for his daily life. Studied it every day to the point that he became the secretary of the Vedanta Society in New York. And he's famous for Hero with 1,000 Faces and the concept of the hero's journey. If you all have ever heard of the hero's journey, this is Joseph Campbell. And the premise there is that there's only so many stories that humans resonate with. And the hero's journey and Hero with 1,000 Faces is like every story has essentially 6 substructures to it. It's all the same story over and over and over again. And so if you are a storyteller, I think reading Hero with 1,000 Faces, which is very much aligned with why does it resonate with us? It's because it's our story. Why does Bhagavad Gita, 2,500 years in, why is it still the best-selling poem every year? Because it's our story. We know there's a battle that we don't quite have the courage to fight. We're looking for guidance. Or we know there's a battle out there, and we want someone else to fight it, perhaps. We're reading the story and how this other person fought it, and then you get halfway through and you're like, shit, this is for me. So the advice that I would give is reading Hero with 1,000 Faces will tell you the narrative arcs of every story that resonates with us. And then if you studied Vedanta each day, or just read Vedanta treatise once and then never studied it again, because you don't need to study it each day, but you recognize that this is the story that resonates with all of us. And the story is, you are what you're seeking. That's the end of this philosophy. I say it in the first episode of Daily Vedantic. It's, minute 15 of the 15-minute overview. The end of this philosophy, the deep end of the pool, the shallow end is things that we've touched on before: surrender to a duty-bound existence, develop the intellect, the body, the mind, intellect, kind of tripart equipments to navigate the world. That's the shallow end. That's the helpful here and now, the meeting in an hour. You could use these things and it could help. But the deep end of the pool is you are what you're seeking. Not who you think you are, but who you are deep down. Not who you've been told you are, not the sounds that come out of your parents' mouth when they refer to you, but who you really are is what is. There is no bigger revelation in a story than you are what is. You are what your community needs. And you are capable of not just bringing that forth, but it's your destiny. You're welcome. That's I'm just regurgitating the words of the masters. But that is the story of Star Wars. That's the story of Harry Potter. That is the story of no joke. All serious, that is the story. Star Wars, Luke Skywalker thinks he's this tiny little thing on the far-flung corner of the universe. He's destined to save it all. And people take that, obviously, as like an external pursuit. But the resonance internally of all of us is, maybe I'm meant to be that hero. But it's not, writing some interstellar universe, perhaps. Maybe it's just in your community where you live right now. There's some brokenness. And if you surrendered into a duty-bound existence of what you're wired for, physical community, your digital community, maybe your family on a text thread you're on right now, there might be a lot to battle through, a lot of muscles to build up before you start gliding on the wave. A lot of, Jeff Bezos has this great quote of, to innovate, innovators must have a willingness to be misunderstood. I think about this all the time. My friends back in Texas, when I have this philosophy podcast, I'm like, yeah, they have no clue what I'm talking about. And they probably think it's so out there. But that willingness to be misunderstood, that willingness to surrender into what you're wired for, it's what our communities need. It's what even the parents that might not understand, it's what they need. It's what they've always wanted for you. And it's ultimately what you're seeking. Got time for 2 more. Yes, Priya.
So in the examples you gave, Steve Jobs wanting to do noodles, guidance to go back to Apple, Michael Jordan wanting to play baseball, went into basketball. What would your comments be around those reconciling? Because you brought up Swadharma before, versus like desire, right? Maybe you have a desire to play baseball, but you're wired to do basketball. If you go towards basketball, but you do that without detachment, but still reluctantly, because baseball's not in the cards, for example, how do you reconcile those?
Well, Reva, how would you reconcile that desire and relinquishment of the desire?
I'll just speak from what I know, and I'm definitely still trying to figure this out. So don't consider me an expert in this, still navigating this when it comes to, for example, my desire for music versus building a financial services company. I know what it's not, though. So, for example, before I had a desire based on my conditioning of what I felt like success was to be a venture-backed technology CEO with the biggest billion-dollar exit. I know that my Swadharma, or I believe, is not that. So I will not do that. If I push myself in every way and destroy myself, do I think I have the intelligence and intellectual capacity to be that? Maybe. But I do not believe I'm wired for that. That's my best answer. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah, and I think it's a push and a pull, luckily, because it makes it really easy. If you have like a push and a pull influencing an object, then it's going to be twice as effective. And I think it's when I've put myself, and by the way, this philosophy says all the time, it's like, these are eternal. There's like 25, 26 principles in this philosophy. Another word for it is sanatana dharma, which means eternal principles. There are no shoulds, should nots. There are no thou shalts. There's no list of commandments. It's just, here are principles. Take them or leave them. And if they don't make sense for you, leave it on. Swami will say all the time, leave it on the shelf. Like if some of these, hey, the ones about action and practicality, that was really helpful. And then you are what is, that was like too meta, too abstract. Leave it on the shelf. It's not that helpful. If you take one phrase from this that might be helpful, today's hang, then that's time well spent. But the nice thing about this question in surrendering into your Swadharma and something like Jordan as an example is there will be a dissipation of energy when you pursue the thing you're not wired for. And this philosophy is like, hey, take these principles for what they're worth. Go try it out, though. See if it works to go against the thing that you're wired for and just tough it out as an investment bank or the management consultant because it pays so well, even though there's this other calling that you might be wired for. And but go try it out and see if it diminishes if it dissipates your energy. That's definition of wrong action. If it generates energy within you, that's definition of right action. And what's so cool about this is that the pull towards the thing you're wired for is when there is a surrender, that right action generates energy. You're the surfer going 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, and you're like, this is effortless. What the hell is happening? And I'm telling you from experience, Magic Mind, side dish, a salad dressing company, Apt. One of the things that I realized is there is a surrender into the duty of getting these started, but I don't need to be the CEO. I don't need those 3 letters. Younger me craved those 3 letters. I wanted to be the boss, have the last word on things, and sent me to the ER with a heart condition and total burnout and destroyed relationships of just like couldn't make it to friends' weddings, couldn't make it to their bachelor parties, couldn't make it to nephews' births, things like it was just maybe it didn't destroy the relationships, but it certainly didn't help those relationships. Versus now it is gliding, and the pull is it generates energy. You see it work, like I was saying earlier. Within 30 minutes, you see it work. So if you feel a call towards something, maybe you or me 5 years in of hearing this call, and you're waiting for just the right time or a little bit more volume to that call, to surrendering to that unique usefulness. And if that's you, let this be that call. You already decided to come to a weird thing on a Friday morning, the start of the new year, when maybe some friends are still nursing hangovers. Maybe this is that call. And what's so crazy, like I said, to reinforce it one more time, as opposed to the cultural message that we hear of like, it'll be worth it 10 years down the road. You'll feel it within 30 minutes. Holy shit. Surrender to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. That thing that guy said really worked. And it'll generate energy. Sure. One more. Yes.
Yeah, first of all, appreciate you guys putting this on. This was awesome.
Of course.
But you guys mentioned being of service to people, your community, but then also obviously having to take care of your mind, body, and intellect as well. Something I struggle with is definitely how to balance those two and also want to be as of much service as possible to the community. How do you guys, or how did you go about finding what was like the perfect amount of focus on self to then be able to service your community? Are there mental models or principles that you guys have used?
Yes, and the Gita has this, and by the way, the Gita is it's so self-contained and powerful in that within this philosophy, the Upanishads, which are at the end of the Vedas, they're the philosophical portions of the Vedas. So Vedanta means end of the Vedas. These 4 textbooks I mentioned earlier. The Upanishads, the Gita, they're all self-contained. It's not like a Western tradition like Christianity where you have to like triangulate different books and they all come together. A 13 verse. There's a Upanishad that's 13 verses. It's the whole philosophy in 13 verses. The whole philosophy is actually in 3 words. The most famous 3 words of the philosophy is tattvamasi, which is that thou art. You are that. You are what you're seeking. You are what is. Again, it's not Reva is what is. It's not James is what is. That's the height of megalomania and narcissism. It is beneath all of these layers of who I think I am. Beneath all the layers of who you think you might be. The most unthinkable proposition is the reality, according to the oldest philosophy in the world. You are what is. To get to the question at hand of what's the framework, it's in the Gita where it says the most important work we do for others is the work we do on ourselves. The most important work we do for others is the work we do on ourselves. So the development of your body, mind, intellect is the most important work that you do for others. It's not, it is not antithetical. It's not kind of like orthogonal. It is actually the most powerful work you do for others. That 15, 20, 30 hour you spend in the morning on self-development, that hour in the gym 3 times a week, like that's, especially when you recognize this is for my community. It's all for them. You enjoy it as someone overwatching it all. Like, whoa, how's this happening? It's very, very strange But that development of the self it's the most profound way that you can help others. So yeah, that's again, you don't hear that very often in the West. It actually lists the 5 ways of helping people, and it ranks them: money, time, emotion, wisdom, and then your own self-development. From least helpful to most helpful. Money, to give someone $20 that's homeless a block from here. That's a way to help. It might not be that helpful. It might actually could be harmful if it's used in it's potentially encouraging a habit that is self-destructive. Then there's time. Maybe sitting down with them is actually far better than giving them $20. Having a conversation with them, making them feel like a person for the 7 minutes that no one else will give them during the course of the day. Emotion, not just giving them a time, but giving them an emotional perspective, sharing an emotional perspective with them. It'll make those 7 minutes far more fruitful, perhaps, to help them. Or the 7 minutes with the parent that you're like, I don't really want to answer this call. Okay, fine. Not just give them time on the phone, but you really give them that empathetic, emotional space that they're really looking for. And then wisdom. Someone's going through something really tough. Giving them all of these. Maybe it's financial, time, emotional, and then all done from the right, wise perspective. Wisdom is knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it, all at the same time. So it's the wisdom to do all of those things. Those are all really helpful. But what gives us that wisdom? It's the development of ourselves. All right. Reva, anything else you want to add?
No, I thought that was great session to kick off the new year, and I appreciate you inviting me to do this. And I guess if the one last phrase I would say, which you alluded to, that really struck with me recently reading the Gita, was man equals God minus desire. I love formulas and numbers, and when you just think about the simplification of everything in terms of our own suffering, which is...
Do you mind saying that again?
Man equals God minus desire. So everything comes from desire and attachment. So that's what I'll leave you with.
All of this. And if you're like, how the hell, what are these guys talking about? How can I be all that is? The example this philosophy points to all the time, and maybe the one that you could reflect on tomorrow morning or later today, is the dream example. And it's so preposterous. When I first heard this, I was like, this is insane. Because this philosophy, it does not mince words. When it says you are that, you are what is, a way of saying it is you are the infinite being. You are infinitude itself. And then we go, well, that can't be the case. And then maybe some extra weight is given to, okay, if this has lasted 5,000 plus years, maybe there's something to it. It's the heart of all. St. Athanasius, who oversaw the Council of Nicaea, which is much of the early church of Christianity has been lost. But he's famous for saying, God became man so that man may become God. It is like a Western hierarchical, organized religious viewpoint that you can't say that, you can't think that. But throughout the world, there are many philosophies that have said reality is so damn different than what we think that it is blinding. That's Socrates. That's the allegory of the cave. Is we think reality is shadows on the cave wall, and it's actually so different. And that's the oldest, most famous philosophical concept in the West, is saying what we think is true is not only not true, it has nothing to do with what is true that is so blinding. And this philosophy gives the dream example, which is so simplifying, where it says, just like this is, so you have deep sleep, dream, and then this waking state. And it says this waking state is just an elevated version of a dream. Where in the dream, you have other people, you have walls, ground, colors, shoes, gravity, drama. You don't know what's going to happen. And yet you're creating it all. You are all world creators. You do it every night. Create an entire world. And you're in a room and you're like, well, of course I'm in here because I was doing this other thing. And of course these other people, and this isn't how I wanted it to go. And then why is it? And they're wearing these clothes and I'm wearing these clothes and got shoes on. Every shimmer of every wave, every leaf of every tree in your dream is you. And this philosophy just says, what if that's what's happening here? All right. Great to kick off the year with you all, and feel free to come up and say hey.